back to week 3 of DevCamp, where we will continue to explore the organizational magic of CSS. This is video 3.2, where we will go over how to use the box model to add more space between elements on your site. So first of all, what is a box model? In CSS, we use the term box model when referring to design and layout. In this model, all HTML elements are interpreted as boxes. As such, the CSS box model is a box that wraps around every HTML element. The box model, illustrated in the picture on your screen, consists of the margin, border, padding, as well as the content itself. We are now going to walk through how the margin, border, and padding actually interact with the content. First up, the margin. The margin creates space around an element outside the border. The margin has 4 properties, one for each side of the box. When we write the code for a margin of an element, we start from the top and write in the margins going clockwise. So the margins go top, right, bottom, left. In this example on the screen, margin, 25 pixels, 50 pixels, 0 pixels, and 100 pixels, the top margin is 25, the right margin is 50, the bottom margin is 0, and the left margin is 100. Does anything stand out to you in the code on the screen? Well, I think that 0 in there is a little weird. Why do you think I still need to add 0 even if nothing's happening there? Basically, in CSS, we need to be super literal. So even if you want a side to be 0, you still need to include it in your code. If you don't write out all 4 margins, the computer will not interpret your code as you intended. Let's take a look at how we can use the margin box model properly in our own sites. When looking at my site, I want more space between my content and the edge of my screen. Because I want to adjust all the content on my screen, I'm going to add a margin to my body selector. Now I want to add a margin on every side that's 2em. Using what I just learned, I could write margin, 2em, 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 2em to get a margin of 2em on each side. But that's pretty repetitive. Luckily, the CSS box model has some awesome shortcuts. If I just put one value after the margin, then the computer knows to apply that margin to all the sides. So now my code is just margin, 2em. Next, let's add some more space between the header, footer, and the other content. Let's start by creating 2 separate header and footer selectors. To more easily see the changes we make to the header and footer, let's also change their background to be a different color. I'm going to make mine gray, but you can make yours whatever color you like. Then, for my header, I want to add a margin on the bottom of my content. I could write margin 0em, 0em, 1em, 0em to get a 1em margin on the bottom. But that also feels like a lot of code to change one thing. Instead, I could use the CSS box model property of margin bottom. So I can just write margin-bottom, 1em to get a 1em margin on the bottom of the header. Finally, for my footer I can use the same thing. However, this time I would apply the margin to the top. So I just need to write margin-top, 1em. Feel free to pause the video and take time adding your own margins to your site. Next up, the border. The border property allows us to customize the border surrounding our element. The border has 3 values: width, style, and color. Notice that if you ever want to use the border property, you need to make sure you've denoted the style, otherwise it won't work. So when writing the code for the border, we write the property name, followed by 3 values: width, style, and color. In the example on the screen, border 5px solid red, the width is 5px, the style is solid, and the color is red. Note that the default for style is none. As such, in order for the other values to work, you must set the style value. When looking at my site, I initially don't see anything I want to add a border to. But to show you how it works, I'm going to go ahead and add a 2-pixel solid purple border around the images on my site. To do this, I'm going to use the image selector, and then inside the curly braces, I write border, 2px, solid purple. I now have a solid purple border around both the images on my site. We can further customize our borders by using the border radius property. To do this, you write border-radius and then apply a value to it, like 0.25 em. You can apply a border radius to any element, even images. Let's take a look at how we can use the border radius property on our own sites. When looking at my site, I want to add a border radius to my header and footer. To do this, I will write border-radius : 0.3 em under the header and footer sections. By putting this code in there, corners of my header and my footer are now slightly curved. Try it out yourself. Pause here and try adding a border radius to another element on your site. Last up, padding. Padding works similarly to the margin property. However, padding creates space around an element's content inside of any border. Like the margin, padding also has 4 values, one for each side of the box. To help you better differentiate between margin and padding, think of it like this. Padding squeezes the content inside the box, and margin pushes content away from the box. Writing code for the padding is almost exactly the same as the margin. The only difference is that you write padding instead of margin in front of the colon. Like the margin, you also write padding values clockwise starting from the top. In this example, padding : 25 pix, 50 pix, 75 pix, 0 pix. The top padding is set to 25 pix, the right padding is 50 pix, the bottom padding is 75 pix, and the left padding is 0 pix. Notice that also like the margin, you will need to clear the padding for each side, even if the value is 0. Let's take a look at how we can apply padding to our own sites. When first looking at my site, I noticed that the header and footer could definitely use some extra space. I want to add more padding to the sides than the top and bottom, so I'm going to write padding : 0.5 em, 1 em, 0.5 em, 1 em under the header and footer selector I've already defined. Where else on your site do you want to add padding? Pause here and take a moment to add more padding to your site. Phew! Customizing is definitely a lot of work. As we continue on, remember to be patient with yourself. It takes time to get things looking exactly the way you want it. The more you practice, though, the easier the coding will start to be. Great work! Now that we've worked with the box model, head on over to video 3.3 to learn how to use Flexbox to add more customization to your sites.